Today we are going to be graphing linear inequalities. If you remember back to graphing inequalities with one variable, for example, x is greater than 2, when we had a greater than sign or a less than sign, we had what was called an open circle. When we had a greater than or equal to or a less than or equal to sign, we had a closed circle. I would draw this graph on a number line, putting 2 in the middle, 3 to the right, 1 to the left. In this case, I would have an open circle, and the numbers greater than 2, I would need to shade to the right. Graphing linear inequalities is going to be a bit different. When we graph a linear equation, we draw a straight line on a set of axes. When we graph a linear inequality, we are going to need to shade and do something similar to drawing an open and a closed circle. Make sure you are on the Graphing Linear Inequalities green page before we begin. When graphing linear inequalities, the very first thing you need to do is get y by itself, if it is not already. The second thing you're going to need to do is decide if you have what we call a solid line or a dashed line. This is similar to our open and closed circle, and we'll go into this more in a minute. The third thing you need to do is graph that solid or dashed line using the graphing calculator. That line is going to be what we call our boundary line. It's going to be our boundary of the shading that we do. The last thing you do with graphing linear inequalities is to shade. Remember, we have hoivux if it's just a y or just an x that may come in handy. So keep this in mind. Pause the video now and make sure that your notes match what I have just written. So how do I decide if my line should be solid or if it should be dashed? It's similar to deciding if it should be open or closed. If I have extra ink, I draw a solid line. So if I have a less than or equal to or a greater than or equal to, my line should be solid. Think closed circle, solid line. When I have a dashed line, I think open circle. If I have a less than or a greater than, I have a dashed line. A dashed line is one that is not solid and there is space in between. The line is dashed because the points on the line are not included in the solution. Just like an open circle, the point is not a solution. Pause the video and make sure you have the notes. Keeping in mind what we just said, looking at this example, y is greater than 2 over 3 x minus 4. Decide now in your head if you think that this should be a solid or a dashed line. If you said dashed, you are correct because it is a greater than symbol and there is no equal to. This line will be dashed. Take your calculator now and type in y equals 2 over 3 x minus 4. Remember to put parentheses around the fraction. Once you have that, look at the table. You should see the points 0, negative 4, 3, negative 2, 6, 0, and negative 3, negative 6. Those are the points that I am going to draw on my graph. Make this table underneath the graph on your note page, and then plot the points into the graph. Once you have your points plotted, you need to use your index card to draw a dashed line through the points. At this point, your graph should look like this. Remember to put arrows and a label, and your line should go across the entire graph. If it does not look like this, pause it and fix it. Just like when we graphed inequalities in one variable, we have shading when we are graphing inequalities in two variables. If you have a greater than or a greater than or equal to sign, you are going to shade above. If you have a less than or a less than or equal to sign, you shade below. This only works if y is by itself on the left-hand side of your inequality. Again, it only works if y is by itself on the left side, meaning something like y is less than 2x plus 3, for example, where you see here that y is on the left by itself. Underneath your box, write that down so you have that as a note for yourself, and pause the video while you do that. Going back to our example, we have a greater than symbol. Decide what you think we should shade above or below based on the notes you just took. If you said above, you are correct. Because it is greater than, we are going to shade above that dashed line we drew. When we talk about it being a boundary line, we mean that we're going to shade everything above that line. That's the line we shade above. That's our boundary. Do not go below it. Pause the video if you need to and make sure that your graph looks like mine. This entire region that we shaded is our solution set, meaning any point I pick in there is going to be true for the equation that we were given. So what type of question might they ask me? They might say, is the point -2, 1 in the solution set? If you look, -2, 1 is right here. Since this point is in our shading, our answer would be yes, it is in the solution set. You do not need to write this. It was not on your paper. Let's say they picked the point way over here. (9, -3). It is not in our shading, so it is not a solution. And a dashed line is just like an open circle, so any point on that dashed line is not a solution. You have come to the end of this video. Check to make sure that you have all the notes. Go back and pause if you need to. When you are done, you are moving on to the next one.